start. So thank you very much for joining me. My name's Rob Drummond. I have a business called True Story Selling, which is really about telling more of your story in your marketing in a systematic way. So when people first enter your world, the work that I do is mostly about illustrating some kind of transformation. Because when you think about it, I think there's a lot of talk in the marketing world about tactics and systems and funnels, and all of that stuff is great. And it's great to talk about the latest tool developments. We could have endless webinars on ClickFunnels and Infusionsoft and HubSpot, and all of these things. But when you strip it away, you have to ask, like, what really matters. So that's kind of what I do in my business, because what I think really matters is getting the message right. If you get the message right and get the story right, then everything else kind of falls into place. Just a note on the housekeeping. Actually, I am flying solo, but if you raise your hand or ask a question, I should get a little flashing light on my dashboard. So yeah, but I'll stop periodically just to check the question box. Okay, so today's webinar is for you. So today's webinar is not for everyone who runs a business. It is for a specific type of business owner, but I think that this type of business owner is underrepresented, and I would include myself in this category. So I would like to see if this resonates with you. So this webinar is for you if you provide some kind of transformation to your customers. So the people that you work with, whether that's to deliver services or you deliver a product, when they have worked with you for a while, they are not necessarily the same person. They don't have necessarily the same outlook on things as before they found you. And that's quite a powerful thing, because in that situation, you're really improving people's lives. You're solving deep fundamental problems that are maybe problems that people don't always understand fully. So you're in the right place if you do that sort of work. You're in the right place if you panic slightly when people ask what you do, because if you do that sort of like transformational work, so I guess typical examples would be like coaches, consultants, educators in some capacity, but I use educators in like the broadest possible sense of the word. Like if you have to educate your customers before they're really ready to buy from you, then you're in the right place, because when people ask you what you do, so when you go to networking meetings, like you end up kind of panicking. And I used to do this for a long time. Like people would ask me what I did, and I'd have to sort of mentally figure out how much do you know about marketing, how much do you know about storytelling, and then you end up giving some answer that doesn't anywhere near represent the value that you provide. You end up saying silly things like, oh, I work in marketing, which is, completely undersells what you do. You're in the right place if you have a core customer base who really love your work, but if you struggle to explain your value to new prospects. So it's a similar sort of thing. You've got a core fan base of people who've been through this transformation, but to new customers, it's quite hard to explain your value to them, or at least using conventional marketing. And for the same reasons, you'll probably find that Facebook ads, Google ads, they may work sometimes, but often it's quite expensive. You might not get huge amounts of traction anymore with these things. I certainly find that in my business, I bid on a few keywords on Google, for example, and it's okay. Like a few people find me that way, but it's not like a runaway success. So affordable lead generation is an issue for you, becoming more of an issue because click prices are really going up. Facebook are really turning the screw in terms of click prices. So that's definitely an issue. And so this is really for you if you kind of identify more as like an artist than an entrepreneur. So I probably need to explain that recently. I got this distinction from Megan Masoda recently, and what her comment was that when you like the word entrepreneur is kind of bandied around quite a lot to mean anyone that owns a business, and I own a business, but I don't really identify as an entrepreneur because I can't really do any work. It has to be work that I'm deeply inspired by. I'm really a producer at heart. I love to produce stuff, make courses, work with people, produce copy. And in that sense, I mean, I'm not a conventional artist, and my wife would certainly tell you that I've got the artistic capability of, a monkey. But I'm an artist in terms of like the work that I'm doing. So if that resonates with you, then you're in the right place, basically. So storytelling has really come onto the scene in the last few years, and there are a lot of companies that are embracing stories, and I think in a sort of superficial way that is kind of tagged onto your marketing. So a lot of the supermarkets in the UK are now telling food stories about where their produce has come from. So we've got stuff like this, so from Tesco, which is one of the supermarkets here, we now have food love stories about things like Joe's Showstopper fish pie. And they've introduced an element of story here where they're saying the in-laws are coming around for dinner for the first time and we're desperate to impress. Joe knows there's one dish, never lets her down, blah, blah, blah. And I think that this isn't really what we're doing. This isn't a story that actually communicates anything meaningful. It's bolting storytelling on it as a tactic without really addressing the message underneath it and without really communicating anything really authentic about you. So, I just want to point out that, storytelling is becoming more on the radar, and but I think we need to be sort of careful about how we're doing it. So I know we've got a few kind of new or newish faces on the webinar today, so I'd like to tell you my story in terms of how I got into what I'm doing. If you have heard the story before, please bear with me because there is a specific structure to this that I'm going to explain, and the structure is kind of the one that I suggest that you look at for telling your own story. So in terms of like my journey to today, my first job after university was working for a CRM company, which in my world stands for customer relationship management. So things like Salesforce, Infusionsoft, Microsoft Dynamics are all examples of CRM systems. So this photo was taken in 2007 in an office that we used to work in near London. And for a time being, this was a good job. I learned a lot about marketing. I stuffed a lot of envelopes, as you can see in the photo. We had big boxes of marketing stuff. But after about 4 years in the role, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but I kind of felt like I'd stagnated. I'd kind of learned everything that there was to learn in the role, and I just wasn't getting that much out of it. And I've got these kind of artistic-ish, urges to go and create stuff. And one evening I went out for a meal with my then girlfriend, my now wife, Lindsay, and said, look, I think I'm going to just hand them a notice and work for myself. And she was obviously very concerned because we have a completely different tolerance of risk. And I said to her, how hard can it be? So I ended up walking the streets of my local town. My first venture was selling SMS text messaging services to local businesses, which in hindsight was a great idea that nobody wanted. And I would walk into shops and ask the business owner if they wanted to talk to me about SMS text messaging. And of course, you can imagine the answer to that was no. And one day I walked into this hair salon in Beaconsfield, which is a town near London. And purely by chance, I spoke to the business owner and I asked him if I could speak to him about SMS text messaging. And he said to me, no, my accountant already deals with my taxes. And I said to him, no, not taxes, text messaging, like on your phone. And he goes, well, I don't think I really need that, but can you get me ranked on Google, in the Google rankings? And I kind of yawned nonchalantly and said, yeah, I think I probably can actually. So we arranged a meeting the following week, and I went back with my laptop that I'd borrowed from my previous job, and I turned up in a suit, deeply incongruous, as we perched on a bench in his hair salon, and there's customers all around us kind of having their hair dried in the dryers. And I showed him this website that I'd mocked up in WordPress, and he kind of nodded along, and suddenly he got very serious, and he said, okay, I like that, but how much is it going to cost? And I said, I did the car salesman thing, and I sucked him through my teeth, and I said, it's going to be so many hours at so many pounds an hour, so £300, which is about $500 which in hindsight is completely stupid. That's far too cheap. And he said, no way. That's I've had quotes in the past for £100. So in the end, that project didn't really work out, but it led me down a trail, and I ended up deciding I wanted to become a web designer. And then I got involved, and things started to go a little bit better. I picked up a few clients. I went along to a local networking group. And actually, when I rang up this group and said, can I come along as a web designer? And they said to me, we're really sorry, but we've already got a web designer in the group. This was like a BNI type of arrangement where they only have one of each occupation in the group, because heaven forbid that you compete with each other. And I said, it's all right, it's not a problem. I'll come along as a Google AdWords consultant. So I went along as a Google AdWords consultant and spoke to people about my. So this photo was taken in about 2012. I spoke to people about my budding yet non-existent Google AdWords management service. And I managed to build up a bit of rapport and build up a bit of trust. And that was where my first real success came in business. I managed to take on a few AdWords clients, which was kind of like a great education, really, because you learn how to write ads, you learn how to research copy. And for a while, things looked like they were going really well. This is a screenshot from a client that I was working with at the time, and we went from generating, 0 conversions here to generating kind of 2 to 4 business inquiries a day. And my kind of ego swelled up a bit, and I was like, you know what, I'm quite good at this. And the client roster was ticking up quite nicely. And then one day I get a phone call, and it'd be from the client, and they'd go, well, we're really sorry, Rob, but these leads, they just haven't led to any business, so we're going to have to end the engagement. And I was pulling my hair out over this. And at the time, I noticed that 2 of my most interesting clients who took marketing automation most seriously used Infusionsoft. And I ended up putting out a message on Perry Marshall's forum saying, look, I need to get involved in Infusionsoft. I'm losing AdWords clients. And I made the decision at that point to become an Infusionsoft consultant. And this led to like a period of frustration for me, because I went from having quite a simple business of helping people with AdWords to realizing that that was actually only one part of the problem, and trying to expand my business to do AdWords, email marketing. I was selling CRM systems, and actually became an Infusionsoft certified partner. This was a campaign that I worked on quite early on, and I eventually got to a point where I didn't have much money. I was trying to do a lot. I wasn't getting any traction, and I basically borrowed some money to go to Infusionsoft's Icon conference. This would have been in about 2015. And I remember sitting there on the flight over there thinking, I really, really need to make this work. And then I was thinking through in my mind the conversations I was about to have, and people asking me what I did. I was saying earlier about you panicking when people ask you what you do. It's like, oh no, people are going to ask me what I do. And it's like, do I lead with AdWords? Do I say I'm an Infusionsoft consultant? And I remember sitting there on a 10-hour flight to Phoenix thinking, I'm in trouble here. And I went to Icon, and I messed up all sorts of conversations by not having real clarity on what it was I was doing. And the very last presentation was Gary Vaynerchuk. And you might have heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. I have a bit of a take or leave it time with him. But I sat there in the audience, and he said, all of you who are trying to do 7 different things, you need to stop. You need to pick one of them, and you need to start winning. And that was really the turning point, because I was like, well, actually, if you strip away all of these things that I've been adding on, the thing that I really care about is narrative and story. I care about the quality of your database, but really what I care about is telling the right story to the right people and figuring out what the story needs to be. And that's really my special skill. And so from there, I've stripped away a lot of the other stuff. I've got a lot more clarity over what I'm doing. So the reason I told you that story is because it follows a very distinct pattern. It's meant to talk you through a transformation that I've gone through in my own business. And I'm not saying right here and now that it is the story, the transformational story that I'll still be telling in a few years' time. But the reason that I tell you that story is because it's really a story about getting marketing clarity. That's what I deliver people. That's what people who work with me get, is that transformation. So I have to tell you my own transformation to marketing clarity, because then the people who also want that kind of resonate with that story. So I will talk more about this in a bit, but it follows quite a specific pattern. So I'll talk you through it briefly now, but the story starts off, you remember I was in my job, and we have this kind of call, and you have to set the scene. and you have to set the scene where things can't carry on um, as they were. You know, you can't carry along the same path. So you decide that you're going to make a change, and for a while things go well. But for at the moment, at this point in the story, there hasn't really been any serious character change. You haven't really developed as a person. The transformation that on your part hasn't happened yet. So of course the wheels fall off. Everything goes wrong. We have the frustration phase, and then the final realization, and then things finally improve. And actually, to tell a story in this structure is actually a lot easier, because otherwise, if I just told you to tell a story, it's actually quite a hard thing to do, because you know your story is messy. You've got to pick the right things to talk about.